stuff we're already discussing?
James, something I was thinking about is, so because we do like a lot of research on this team in terms of BYOID, I'm thinking let's have like some set of work that is defined. So we research and then come out with output maybe every 2 weeks, and then we can throw it out on GitHub, and then we can get people's input, even if they cannot join this meeting. So probably we can track progress. I don't know how we're going to do that, but it's just something I was thinking about.
Well, we've been using Google Documents for collaboration, and that's a pretty good collaboration environment where you can have comments and discussion on the side. I'm not sure we're ready to move it into GitHub at this point, but I think that is a good idea to put something on GitHub besides just reporting on the issues.
But actually, we just started recording. Maybe we should initialize the meeting, Leah.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is the BYOID open meeting for February 10th, 2018. The time is 8:34. And we are discussing the identity, let's say, awareness project, the Sovereign Identity Awareness Project.
That sounds good.
It's good to see you. I mean, it's good not to see you, Nikki. But yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot. I didn't connect the name.
Her name is Amaka.
Really, Amaka. I'm really glad you joined us this morning. I'll just bring attention to the log document, and I'll put that back into the chat for everybody. And I wish, whoops, that's not it.
He was working on the log document, but that's not the link.
And I appreciate it if people would add some notes to that document. Just free form is fine.
Yes, everybody can edit simultaneously. It's really quite impressive.
What is that? I put a couple of comments in. One of the things was that in working with HoloChain and the New Earth Planetary Alliance people, asked me to summarize what self-sovereign distributed identity was all about. And I put together a few sentences which they understand some of the sentences. Distributed identity systems allow the discovery of identity services that may be controlled by the user themselves. Self-sovereign identity is enabled by open standards for a distributed system that allows every individual to utilize their own trusted identity services to be used for authentication, even if they are the only identity that is served by the service. Decentralized identity may include attestations and proofs such that the user is not subject to any single identity authority. Trusted pseudo-anonymous identities can be built in webs of trust. User-managed authorization puts the user in control of how their identity may or may not be used. Okay, so take a look at that. If there's some point I missed, put in there. But I think the main thing is how to present these ideas, basic ideas, in a manner that is uh, that compelling to, I guess, our target, our targets, and maybe but if I left out any important points, let me know. Go ahead, John.
This follows on from my last comment. Is I would consider myself technical. I've been involved with IT for too long, 25 years at least. I would say that paragraph, to be blunt, is probably correct. I'm not the expert here, but it's impenetrable. And I would actually give myself the task of rewriting it. And it won't take me a week. It'll probably take me a lifetime. But I think until we can do that, rewrite it so it can be done in an elevator and somebody gets in at the bottom and comes out at the top and understands it, that is really what I was trying to say earlier, is it's going to... So I'll have a go.
Thank you, John. Thank you. But actually, that would
I don't
be
know what to let myself in for.
Yeah, that word you used, it would be great if we had a accessible elevator pitch, which could explain this to the mainstream of the bell curve in words that they understand. I mean, it would almost be a mission statement or something, but
I want it as well. I want it.
You know, and a problem with a lot of these concepts we're dealing with is that they are, same thing that's happening in science and physics, looking for underlying simplicity, the theory of everything, the simple equation that describes everything. And what we find is quantum logical systems inherently complex, and we have almost infinite complexity at the bottom layer rather than simplicity. And that's the same thing that's happening in these areas as well. Identity is such a rich, complex field, and I tried to include the key points here, and I don't see any point that can be taken away. And like you said, I mean, people will find this impenetrable. But we're not going to be able to come up with an elevator pitch, okay? Except maybe for little segments, we can come up with pitches. It's like who was it? Bamberger said, if you can't write your idea on the back of my business card, you don't have a clear idea. And I found myself, since someone first told me that, when I was at a computer hacking conference back in 1976 or around. I've so often found myself in a position where the thing that I was thinking, the thing I was working on, could not be boiled down into something simple. And so that's been a battle. But in any case, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, sometimes you need to make it simpler. You actually have to make it longer to make it simpler. I mean, and then actually I found like when I'm trying to find an elevator pitch type thing, the first thing I would do with that paragraph is I wouldn't try to make it shorter. I would try to make it longer, and so that it has short, simple sentences and maybe multiple very short paragraphs, and say, okay, this is it. This is what we're trying to communicate. And then how do you extract the essence of that and say it in 3 sentences or something?
I can remember, this is a long time ago, when credit cards came into circulation. And there was a time during that period where older people, for example, let's pick on them, they didn't get it. They just thought it's open to fraud. It's never going to work. How do I know they're going to take the right money? Who do I trust? And yet everybody now uses credit cards or debit cards. So there may be what Leah's saying is you lengthen it, but you have to put lots of analogies in to tie it to the real world.
Yes, I agree with that too. You have to make it fit into what people already know and understand. And you have to, frankly, not bore them to death.
Yes, you have to anchor it.
Because I think as it stands now, you would have to be like super motivated to get through that, because people are going to have to look up, they're going to have to Google search like 7 different phrases in there, right? And they, you know, maybe just go down a rabbit hole on a few of them and then be like, oh, well, either they're going to be like, it's going to set their mind on fire and they're going to be totally fascinated by it and think it's the coolest thing ever. But that's going to be a really small percentage of the people. I think, you know, I think a lot, like, I mean, if that's what you want for, you know, for Dig Life, maybe that's appropriate because you want to use the jargon that makes it as short as possible because they already get it. But then for like, you know, for our, it's not going to work for our meme program. So, and sometimes, you know, I think we have to sacrifice, we don't have to include everything. We don't have to be as accurate and precise as we can possibly be. We just have to get the general concept and the feeling that we want people to feel about the subject, right?
So if you're looking at consumers, customers and consumers and customers, or suppliers and the other end. So we're at the other end, and this is really aimed at the consumer. So really all they're interested in is what are the benefits? I don't care how it's implemented and how it compares with previous systems. Why should I switch from one regime to another? And they also, going back to what you were saying before, somebody said anyway, in Dig Life, there is a tendency, it has been said, to actually use new words. So I'm actually looking up now Jim's use of attestations, which actually had a different meaning to what I thought it was. But in Dig Life, there is a deliberate choice to use words which are not in the usual vernacular, because words that are currently in common use are loaded terms. So what they try and do is find words which haven't been used for a long time, or aren't used, or even made up words. And I think that's something that a consumer would find really confusing or difficult to comprehend or digest or whatever. So it's a way of saying, take that language that's being used there, which is obviously, it's succinct and it's you know, it's down to the bare bones. It gets the message across to a technical person, but some way it's got to be I mean, I've taken on the challenge to do this, so I'll make a fool of myself. I don't care, but I'll have a
Well, I mean, we could all take a stab at it. You do a first pass, and then somebody else can, you know. Hopefully, it doesn't turn out like the telephone game, but as long as we all understand the message that we're trying to get across. I mean, maybe it has to be a group effort. You do it first, and then if you don't feel like you've accomplished what you wanted to accomplish, then maybe other people can try.
So let's agree what the target audience is first, though. What would you say?
Well, Jim, that was a higher level target audience, right? The people who asked you for that statement.
Yeah, but it's hard. You know, these are.
In a way, this question relates to the segments question that we had before, meaning only the people that are really going to care about this really want to understand what you mean. The rest of the people are like, go away. Google is good enough for me. So I think the half a dozen or so segments that were listed there may be a way to think about, assuming that there is some degree of reception, but at the same time, we should probably also have, like you were saying earlier, John.
Can we put a list of the target?
We need to anchor it into a job low consumer or the solution that does not, that only cares about the benefits and not the technology and the philosophies behind it, right? So we need to balance that. I don't know. So we can take a few cuts at it, see what sticks.
No, I think to some extent we need a different message for each target. And you know, I don't think we can generalize them really.
So stay with like a very high level, very technical people who know the technology. Okay.
Yeah.
Second one, go with the people who are basically neophytes and who basically have no understanding of blockchain or digital identity, and then third is somewhere in between.
Yeah, it looks like there's more than one dimension here because you know, a lot of the people in the communities that we're dealing with, it's split like 50-50. Half of them are not technical at all, and half of them are technical. I think in Dick Life, we probably even have more non-technical people than in Holochain. Of course, in NEPA, it's largely non-technical.
For the first step then, Jim, for the first week, rather than think about it in terms of a marketing committee, I'd like to just have a go at it in terms of my problems. So what I'd like to do is to be able to come up with a description that's possibly long-winded, but it's about differentiation. Why is it different to what I'm already using? And then you have to then lead into the benefits. But what I'd also like to be able to do, and I don't know who I think I am here. I must be on some kind of, drank too much caffeine. But what I would also like to do, I think, is to try and work memes into it. It has to be where, one of the memes that stuck with me is one of Jim's, is centralization is, I've forgotten it now. Centralization is risky because it's corruptible. Centralized systems are risky because they are corruptible. Now, that's not really runs off the tongue, but it works for me. And I think trying to be able to work out some, I don't know, childlike memes around this. So it's what's the differentiation, then the benefits, and then some kind of snappy way of saying it. And if I could do that over the next week or so, and then we perhaps come back and then think about it in terms of target audience, more of a structured way. Because I think you probably need about 5 versions of this. And this is Jim's is the canonical version.
John, with what you said, I think you should have in mind, because I was in the Holochain discussion yesterday, and someone asked, with decentralization, it means, or let me take that back. With centralization, you have expertise, you have scalability, right? That's what centralization brings. how will this be transferred into the decentralized world? You know, someone owns the identity, so how will they have that expertise, scalability as compared to in the centralized world? So you just may want to have that upfront so you can address it while you simplify the definition.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that's the one thing that I didn't say here in the thing was about scalability, because scalability doesn't have much to do with privacy or identity, but clearly any solution you have has to be smart. It has to be scalable. And yeah, they were in GitHub. They were talking about the smart paradigm, or this, what do they call it? The smart methodology, which was where's it? Oh well, I can't think of even what it stands for, but it's you know. Oh, there it is. Scale, safety.
Well, that's one other thought I have on what's just been said about scalability is safety. You know, if you're going to convince people of these, they're self-sovereign, one concern I have is safety. You know, are these systems, how can you prove that these systems are safe? Because with commercial organizations, it's their reputation. If their systems fail, so do they. But with self-sovereign, you know, you're trying to sell this to, say, your grandmother or your son or daughter, you would have concerns, wouldn't you? That's probably one of the main priorities of this. So scalability, yes, but that's not the first question that pops into most people's heads. It's, is the system fundamentally robust?
And I think you should not forget the main reason why you're building this is privacy. So, you know, the privacy and which is what the benefit that we are really for more than anything else at this point.
Well, it's also you know, safety, security. I mean, you know, what you don't want people acting as you on your behalf without your authority. I think that's you know, even more important than privacy. Ooh. Well, he doesn't have a bagel. Want a bite? I thought you had a bagel. It is a bagel. It is a bagel? Yes. What's on it? Cream cheese? I'm gonna get one. Sorry, we're sitting in an internet cafe that has good stuff. Yeah, they don't really have food, but you know, we're gathered here in St. Pete, and after this meeting, we're hitting the beach and going for a swim. And having a kid here from Holland is a great treat. Yeah, it's an unusual day. Usually when I join this meeting, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon for me. But now I'm running in Eastern Standard Time, so Jim and I both commuted to this internet cafe, which is close to where Patrick is based in St. Petersburg.
Are you gonna get lunch after this? You guys keep eating bagels.
Are you guys hearing me? Hearing us?
Yes.
Yeah, we do, and we can see you.
Sorry, I think we're all a little
You're
talked
making us
out.
all hungry.
It's okay. There was no back channel, so I was wondering. But John, I think it's a great idea that we, let me say it collaboratively, clarify that text of Jim's into something that is understandable for a larger segment.
Yeah, it's not clarification, is it? It's just a redrafting or simplification. It's a
Yeah.
that's the clarification that we're working from. It'd be a challenge anyway. Good one.
I think, yeah, I think we can use that as like, we can check the different versions of that statement we create. We can sort of check against that original statement for accuracy to make sure we don't say anything that conflicts with or contradicts that or leaves out some important concept.
Yeah, I really like that idea, Leah. We preserve the original to compare later, and then we can see what progress we've made with our communication.
Yeah, and it could be that for the people who first asked for that definition, that's maybe exactly what they were looking for anyway. And for them, maybe it doesn't have to be changed.
Well, it's interesting. The reason I'm here in Florida, in Tampa, is because my parents are here, and my parents are a much older generation, and so they are way out on the tail of that bell curve. And last night I mentioned having an identity meeting, and I got this quizzical look. So I attempted to explain identity, and yeah, I mean, John, if you think you were confused, my parents were just lost after the first sentence. My father suggested using his social security number as a password.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So I had to explain, no, this is why. And I mentioned the Equifax hack, and probably their data is in that hack, but it's really there's a huge gulf of awareness as you proceed along that curve, and that's what we need to fix.
Okay, so we're going to fix and or take a stab at the different versions of that one paragraph or sentence that Jim put together. What else are we going to do?
Just to clarify, are we defining what identity is, or we're defining what self-sovereign identity is?
Well, I think we're doing both. I'm not sure if you were here, Amaka, when Patrick was explaining earlier that basically there are two books or two segments you wanted to work on. One is Know Yourself, which would be both identity and self-sovereign identity, explaining those kinds of concepts. And the second one is Own Yourself, which speaks to ways and means, what methods are available now, what methods will be available in the near future to control your identity and privacy. So those are the two ways he's looking at that effort. but self-sovereign identity will be in both of those. So does that help?
Yeah, thanks.
So Amika, I put that link in the what's our new working copy, which I'll put in the chat. So if you have stuff like that, you can just put it directly in the document where you think it goes.
Sounds good.
Jim, in your reference text, should the first word be decentralized, not distributed?
Well, that's a it's it should be really a distributed, decentralized, distributed. It could be that decentralized is better here. I mean, if we go back to how it's we're building chaotic organizations. They're not completely chaotic. They have organization, and a distributed system can have a central control or not, and in fact, it shouldn't. But many people consider a distributed system to still have some central component, and that's the confusion. But if you look at the DID standard, for example, what do they use there? I'm pretty sure they use distributed, and
I'll put the link in the chat, Jim.
Maybe you want to share?
Me. That's the document I've read most. Decentralized identifiers.
right, that's the W3C.
And also I have in my mind, whether it's right or wrong, self-sovereign is decentralized.
Well, can we say that if it's decentralized, then by definition it's distributed?
Well, see, this is where how it's been used in different communities varies, and I'm not sure. People are going to object whichever word we use. Some segments, some people demand that if a system is decentralized, that it only has peers in it. It doesn't have any structure whatsoever. And if you insist on that version of distributed, and then the other people say decentralized means that it's still centralized in some manner. I mean, just from the meaning of the word, decentralized to me means that it's not centralized anymore.
Sovereign, Jim.
Sovereign.
Looking at the Sovereign website, this is another one I've digested as part of my homework. The strap line there is self-sovereign identity, decentralized trust, not distributed.
Right. And this is, was really, I was trying to, the idea, what I meant by self-sovereign identity was throwing people for a loop. And so this is why I led with the idea of decentralized and then introduce self-sovereign. But certainly the sovereign trust model is the basis for that, sort of like our guidebook on creating the trustworthy identity. It's definitely an important reference for us. The DID spec enables it, so to speak. It's a step beyond OpenID Connect to allow for a decentralized directory that isn't controlled by any particular authority. But I mean, I almost like, in the Dig Life spirit of using uncommon words, I almost would like to call it, chaotic identity of the future. That's certainly a valid point, and how I have addressed this in the presentation is sort of like, if we look at the decentralized graph all the way to the right, or the distributed graph all the way to the right, without having structure, I like to look at, and this comes from Holochain and the nature view of identity and all that too, from the Metacurrency project and S7 project. But there's a centralized view where the user now is the center of the network. Every user is the center, and then it's decentralized in that there's trusted systems that each person that people belong to, and there's the structure of these organizations or communities, that person-centric plus decentralized plus distributed gives you a holographic network.
Can you repeat that? What plus what plus what gives you a holographic?
Oh, didn't I share?
No.
Oh, yeah, you shared. Okay, does it say, person-centered? It's at the top. Got it. Never mind.
We gotta share. Good.
I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, there's that, there's definitely a lot of tension there in groups when you use those words, because they do have different meanings. Oh, somebody made my, thank you.
You were expounding, so I figured,
While it's hot.
I'll put your bagel together.
So I'll shut up for a bit. There, I got the mouse. We always have trouble with those touchpads.
Next Saturday, some of us will be in Seattle at the governance conference. And
Well, this will be early in the morning.
yeah, this will be 8 in the morning there, won't it?
6, 7,
Yeah, 11 minus
9, 10,
3.
11. Okay.
It will be at 7 o'clock.
8 o'clock. 8, 9, 10, 11. 3 hours.
Well,
Now, the know yourself meeting is at 10 o'clock here. So that would be at 7.
but I'm pretty
So,
sure.
so are we doing that meeting or are we not doing that meeting? Because it may be too.
I think we have to wait and, maybe, I would say we probably will skip, but nothing is going on. And we may know by then what's happening at 8 o'clock. I guess we have to.
I think we'll be eating breakfast
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true.
to get ready.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll keep it we'll play it by the ear for next week, I guess.
The week after that, I will be in Japan, but I will try to get up in the middle of the night and join.
I'm sure you will, kid. I wouldn't.
Well, I'm not
Then
making promises.
Then we have to make sure that your level of commitment has the sweat rolling down the forehead.
Yeah, I said try.
John, I don't think you were invited.
I'll get there one day.
Maybe we can have one of our meetings there.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
It's on my bucket list.
Yeah, I'm sure Jim and Kit will be working on facilitating or making that happen while they're there in Seattle. But I think, so we'll continue with Leah's brain dump sometime. Is anybody available during the week other than, anyway, I guess for Jim and Kit, everything from Thursday or Wednesday is gone, right? You're there in Seattle.
Wednesday is travel, and
Right.
then Thursday through Sunday morning is pretty much solid conference and social time.
Raul, I thought you were coming to Seattle too.
I was hoping to, but I guess somehow my travel assistance request did not go through because I had an I had the wrong email address initially or whatever, and then later on.
I think maybe they turned off the email. I think you were just too late.
No. Actually, Ian told me that I was missing an S in the email. So I had re-forwarded with my original email that got undelivered. But I don't know if anybody had the time to look at it or not. So initially I sent to our chain dash request or whatever it was without the S. And then when Ian, and I didn't try putting the S, but I did try the reverse because I thought maybe I had it wrong and I put request dash our chain, whatever. But it did not occur to me to also try the plural. But anyways, that's what happened.
Well, try again, because that's something that I haven't done yet, and it's on my to-do list, I don't know, for tomorrow or Monday or something, but I would definitely try again, see if they're willing to fund it.
Oh, okay. You have not done yours yet? That was what I was asking Jim, was whether if we can just assume, because there was a verbal commitment to support whoever wanted to come. I was asking Jim if I should just make my reservations and show up there anyways, but
Yeah, that is true. There was a verbal commitment from HJ. Okay, not from the co-op. And
no, actually, even Greg made a verbal commitment that he basically wanted to support whoever is able to come.
Yeah, well, I think he's got the money pinchers bugging him.
You're being recorded, just so you know.
Unnamed people in the co-op are cheap. Greg wants to get the treasury out in the world. He wants to spend it, but he's getting a lot of pushback from stingy members.
I can do that. I can actually shoot him an email saying that, look, since you verbally committed, I'm still going ahead and making a reservation or whatever.
Are you talking about accommodations for the governance forum?
Yeah.
I don't mean to eavesdrop.
No, it's okay. I mean,
You're here.
You're welcome to eavesdrop. But he sent a mail with a request for reimbursement, but it went to the wrong address.
Went to the wrong email address?
Yeah.
No, I had a typo in the email, which then I corrected a second time, and then that also that didn't go. But then Ian eventually gave me the correct email to send it to. But by that time, I guess it was too late or whatever. But I did not get in the list of approved ones.
You got a response that said it was too late?
No.
Then it should be fine.
I mean, if nobody said
no, nobody said no, but nobody said yes either. That's what I'm saying.
Now, Obama the party.
Jim, can you Discord it to me?
Yeah, do you want me to? Okay, yeah, Jim, you want to do that? Are you doing that? You're in Discord right now? Or?
So I can be.
Or I can also do that.
Yeah, why don't you do it? Because I'll probably spell your name wrong.
So Patrick is what? Patrick?
Patrick is Patrick.
Patrick's Patrick.
Oh, there's not. I thought you had a number behind at the end of your name.
727. Patrick 727.
Okay.
Are we done with the meeting?
Processed until the end of February.
Yeah.
I don't see why that.
Okay, so I will stop the recording now. Thank you all for participating. Ciao.